Hey, this is Tuxedo Mark, and welcome to another episode of VLOGTRON, the Voltron vlog. And I am going to be talking about episode 8, The Stolen Lion. And before I get into the episode, I want to discuss the closing credits again. Episode 7 used the medium-sized version. Episode 8 uses the long version. There seems to be no real rhyme or reason as to which they use in which episode. Except maybe depending on how long that the resulting episode runs, because remember they have to cut out footage from the Japanese version. Depending on how long the episode proper runs, that might decide which version of the closing credits gets tacked on. Just a guess. Anyway, episode 8. I hated this episode about as much as the previous one. And that's because, okay, it starts out with Princess getting, well, I keep calling her Princess, because there's one of the episodes was called Princess joins up, but no, Allura, getting some training, and she's like fighting against, well, one of the guys. I keep forgetting their names. Lance, okay. And she is totally inept somehow. Even though at one point, the crosshairs on her screen, she directly targets him. He says she couldn't target him if he was completely still. She's like, oh yeah, watch this. According to the crosshairs on her computer monitor, it should be a direct hit, judging from the visuals. And yet she misses. Her missiles go to the left and to the right of him. They somehow like break off and go in separate directions around him. This is impossible. The only reason to do this is to make Laura look like a lousy pilot. Anyway, she ends up in an accident, and then this ship comes out of nowhere, and this handsome prince saves her. When the governess, who had also come along with Corin and the guys to witness the training exercise, the governess gets into a blue line, which, how is she able to do that? But anyway, she gets Allura out of there. Allura regains consciousness, sees the guy, the prince. And at first, she gets skeptical when he introduces himself. She's like, And then, just a few seconds later, she's totally enamored by him. No joke. Swiftly changing emotions seems to be a theme in this episode, because at least 2 times in the same scene, the governess has like a frown on her face, but then immediately smiles and is all excited. Anyway, apparently in the original Japanese version, okay, before I get to that, Lance is distrusting of the prince, but Allura won't have it. She trusts the prince completely, and so is Corin, and that's that. But no, Lance doesn't trust the prince. And I feel that the only reason to do this is to have the girl end up wrong, proven wrong later in the episode, and the guy being proven right. That's the only reason I see for Allura to just solely trust this guy. I mean, he did save her life, supposedly, but even she says that he showed up in the right place at the right time, and She doesn't find that suspicious, apparently. Anyway, Lance and the prince get into a fight. It's just a cockfight. It's stupid. It's bonehead. Allura wants like Coran or the governess to break it up, and the governess is so enamored by it. She's like, I wish there were two young hot guys fighting over me. Like, anyway, eventually she commands him to break up, and Keith, I think, is like, you heard her, break it up or something, or I don't know. No, she says enough when the prince starts really beating on Lance. That's the final straw. But anyway, Allura, like, the prince apologizes, and Allura invites him to have a banquet at the castle. At the banquet, the governess comes in with the food, and she kicks Lance. She literally kicks him because he's not sitting in his chair properly. It's like, he trips her later on the way out, which, good. But anyway, oh, and the mice. The mice are stealing some meatballs or something from Pidge, and the governess is upset at the mice and is yelling at the mice and trying to chase after the mice. And why doesn't Allura stick up for the mice? I mean, they're supposedly her friends, right? Anyway, Allura invites the prince to stay at the castle. We get a scene where Zoltar and Hagar are discussing how Hagar trained this guy to act like a prince, and he is completely won over the princess. So they spoil the twist that the prince is a bad guy before he reveals himself. I mean, Lance has his suspicions, but I think it would have been more effective without the bad guys just openly talking about it. If you just remove that scene. But anyway. Hagar releases cobras into the palace. Lance is all suspicious and everything. But at this point, Allura and Coran have decided that, you know, it's inappropriate for Allura to pilot the blue line, so she hands the key off to the prince. And then Lance shoots the prince in the arm and reveals that there are snakes underneath in the hole that's made in his shirt. And yeah, the prince is controlling snakes. He has this weird power. And then he picks up Allura, like, over his shoulder and carries her into a blue lion and is going to take her to Zoltar, which is what Zoltar and Hagar were discussing in their earlier scene. It's like they spoiled everything. So, in the blue lion, okay, the guys go after. Allura refuses to help. She sees the spirit of her dead father appearing on a monitor. I think the prince can see him too, but he doesn't trust it. He disbelieves her when she says it's her father. Anyway, she refuses to pilot the blue line, but then Keith calls over the intercom or whatever and tells her to do whatever the guy says for now, and they're going to rescue her. So, eventually, I forget the exact details, but somehow she manages to get into her flight suit and regain control. And I think because the prince formed like a snake monster or turned into a snake monster. Something I don't even remember now, but they beat him, and back in the palace, Allure's sitting on her throne, which I think is the first time that we've seen that. But she tells Coran to look after her, so nothing like this can happen again. But then she stands up and she starts sparkling at the thought of romance, and she's like, unless I wanted to. It's like, does every female character have to desire a man? Like, do they have to be so focused on wanting to get a man and be with a man someday? Why doesn't she just why isn't her desire just to be a good pilot? And just to be a good pilot and defend her people, and that would have been a lot stronger message than, oh yeah, I'm gonna pilot the Blue Line because we need Voltron, but hey, I want a man someday. It's like, anything else about this episode to talk about? Probably not. I just hope things get better. At least I read on the wiki that Allura never tries finding another pilot for the Blue Lion anymore, so I guess she'll settle into her role and will believe that's where she belongs. I hope. Yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks for watching.